Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me this afternoon for the last part of Next Step College. Today, we're going to be doing Ready, Set, Apply, really starting to talk about the application process. What does that look like? And what are some tips and tricks that we want to recommend to you all as you're starting this process? I want to start off by saying we have about an hour, so probably about 45 minutes. And I did get all of the pre-submitted questions. So thanks for sending those in. So I'll definitely leave time at the end to get a chance to answer those questions as well as any questions that might be coming up. And so if you look down below or wherever I am on your screen, you'll be able to see a Q&A function as well as a chat function. Please don't hesitate to reach out. If questions are coming up, I'll try to answer as we go along. I'll definitely be answering all of those questions at the end of the presentation. But we're going to go ahead and get started. So my name is Diana Hernandez. I am the Director of Admission here at California Lutheran University. This is my contact information. Feel free to jot it down even next week, halfway through the cycle, as you're starting to get ready to go to your next college. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out. I am more than happy to be added as your team of resources for you, the students, but also the families that are joining us today. This is a process that you're all going to be going to and toward and through, and I want to make sure that you're all getting the support that you need. A little bit about myself. I am a first-generation college student, so I'm the first in my family to attend college. I'm a proud Cal Lutheran alum. I graduated with my bachelor's in psychology with an emphasis in family and child development. So I'm a little bit biased about Cal Lutheran, but today's presentation, I know I got some specific questions about Cal Lutheran. We'll answer those at the end, but really it's to help give you the tools to apply to all of these different institutions, right? Even if CalU is your number one choice and this is where you want to be, that is great. We're so happy to have you, but I want you to also keep your options open. Just as if we are not your number one school, I want you to definitely consider smaller schools, private schools, large schools, in-state, out-of-state, and every school has a different process and application. And so I want to make sure that you have the tools to apply to all of us. Okay, so this is maybe where you're at in the process, right? Maybe you're thinking, I found my school and a couple of backups, like I said, keeping your options open, but what do I do now? Like, what do I even need to do to apply? What information do I need to gather? Where do I go? How do I know what every school is going to ask? I'm going to give you the tools today, and hopefully both of these questions and then some will be answered by the end of our presentation today. So today we're going to first start by talking about the different types of applications, and then we're going to talk about tips for each. And what do I mean by the different types of applications? It's specifically the CSUs, the UCs, the Common Application, and specifically Cal Lutheran. And then we're going to talk about how do you write these essays, right? All of these supplemental questions, essays that have to do about you, your experience, your background, your goals, your ambitions, your dreams. How do we talk about all of those? And what are some things that we recommend that you all keep in mind as you're going through this process? Again, feel free to type some questions as we're getting some more friends joining here. Use the Q&A function, use the chat function as we go through each slide to make sure that you're getting all of the information that you need. We're going to go ahead and start by talking about the CSU applications, really breaking down the California State University schools. I'm actually going to pause for a second here and backtrack and share that there is a lot more applications than we're going to chat about today. There's specific applications like the Coalition application, there's QuestBridge application. Schools may have their own specific application too. And so know that the best way to go about that is to really research the school that you're wanting to apply. Go to their website. I promise you all the information is going to live there. Many times it's broken down into a checklist or a step-by-step list of all of these different things that you need to do to be able to be considered for admission, and every one of us is a little bit different. And so today we're going to focus in on 3: Common Applications, CSU, and UC, but no, there are more out there. So if you're looking at a school or wanting to apply to a school that doesn't live in these 3 areas, chances are it's one of the many other applications out there. I'm sure there's a lot of resources out there, but these are the 3 that we're going to be focusing on today. So we'll start with the CSUs, the California State University schools. So I don't work at a CSU, but this is all information that I know my colleagues want you all to know, my colleagues at the CSU, as well as information that's online. And so if you're like, there is one application for 23 campuses. I wonder what those 23 campuses are. Know that you can definitely look it up and see a list. All over California, there's these different institutions. And so, like I said, there is one application and they share the information. So by you filling out and submitting it to one school, it doesn't mean that you're submitting it to the CSUs and the UCs and the common application, right? So you're really taking it and looking at one application. But this application is shared across the 23 campuses. And they use what's called the eligibility index. And that is for you to actually see what GPA is required for you to gain admission. This is a little bit of an edit that needs to happen. They're not looking at any test scores, right? So right now, all of the institutions are either test optional or they're just using testing for different placement for different courses. But the really awesome thing about that eligibility index is that you're able to see kind of where you land and what the probability of admission is. So they're able to really disclose that information and break it down for you all. The CSU campuses are really looking at only your A through G courses. So these are a lot of the times covered by your high school graduation requirements, but it's important for you to have conversation with your counselors if you already haven't done this step to figure out, okay, out of all of these courses that I took these last 4 years at my high school, what courses of these are A through G? And then know that some schools are only going to be looking at those courses to be able to determine what your GPA is going to be when you're applying for admission. A lot of the schools in California, if you're seeing us from California, I know we have some from all over the country and we have some international students joining us on this webinar today too. And so if you're in California, a lot of the times they're going to list your GPA. That's going to be seen as a CSU/UC GPA, and that is going to be your A through G courses only. Something important for you to know is that as you're applying through the Cal State Apply website that I'll talk about in just a moment, there's an opportunity for you to express interest and want to enroll in what is called the EOP, or the Educational Opportunity Program. What this is, it really provides awesome opportunities for students to gain admission, transitional, academic, and financial assistance. And this is going to be based on economic eligibility or your household income. And so if any type of support like that is something that you're seeking, please make sure to check that box. Reach out to the different CSU campuses to figure out more information about that. But it is something that you're already going to start signing up for at the time of admission. As we continue with the CSU application, a little bit of the details. You can start applying as early as October 1st. Or I'm sorry, that's the deadline, right? October 1st to November 30th. Because there's 23 campuses, everyone can have different deadlines. And so it's important for you to kind of maybe create a tracker where you're able to say, okay, I'm applying to this school. This is the deadline that I need to meet to keep yourself organized. I recommend also putting it on an agenda or a calendar, and we'll talk about this later on as well, but giving yourself plenty of time to be able to submit that application. The application fee is $70 per campus. And so it's important to know that as well, right? If we're looking to apply to all 23 schools at $70 a school, it can definitely add up. And so make sure that we are looking at our college list really critically, really strategically, to make sure that you have a little bit of everything. Maybe some schools that are a little bit reach, maybe some target schools, right? And making sure that it's all schools that you definitely want to attend, that maybe you've been able to engage with, gone and seen or done a tour on campus, or at least a virtual visit, for you to start to get an idea of the community that you'll be joining at that institution. SAT and ACT scores, as were mentioned previously, they're actually not used for admission purposes, but they can be used for course placement. And so if you have taken those tests, know that. And then it very much depends school to school and what their own criteria, what their own process is going to be. As well as essays may not be required. And so that's something for you to know as well. And one of those columns that in that sheet that I'm asking you all to build, it's like, okay, for example, CSUCI, do they require an essay? When is their deadline? What else do I need to keep in mind for this school? And so keeping it all in one place is definitely going to help you stay organized throughout the process. Okay, things you need or is recommended that you have handy when you're filling out the application to the CSU. It's recommended that you have your unofficial transcripts. This is because you're going to need to input those A through G courses on your transcripts. over to the CSU application. You do need to submit official transcripts by May 1st to the institution that you're attending. But for application purposes, you don't need to send in those official transcripts. You just need to input that information on over. So having unofficial transcripts handy will allow you to do that at a much quicker pace and make sure that it's accurate as well. Social Security number, if you have one, make sure that you include that as well as your citizenship status. You can also indicate if you qualify for a fee waiver. It will actually let you know when you're filling out that application based on your household income. You'll be able to know that. And so if you are like, hey, $70 is a little bit of a stretch for me and my family, that's okay. Reach out to the schools, input that information on the system, and it'll automatically tell you if you qualify for a fee waiver. You may also need your parents' citizenship status information, your annual income for your household as well. And if you are applying to EOP, that program that I was mentioning before that provides a lot of different support services for students, you are going to need your parents' employment and income background, as well as 2 recommendations. So kind of keep that in mind, make that checklist for yourself so that you can have all of these different items ready as you're going through the application process for the CSUs. Now, applying to the UC, so both systems, although they are a university system for California, for the state of California, they're a little bit different. And so it's important to break those two down. So we just talked about the CSUs, the California State Universities. We're now going to talk about the UCs, or University of California. So again, similar to the CSUs, there's one application, but instead of 23 campuses, they have 9 campuses up and down California. Your grades in A through G are going to be what they are looking at. Again, it's going to be key. So if you have taken courses that fall outside of that A through G list, those courses will not be considered when you're applying to the UC or the CSU because they're only looking at those specific courses. Now, the UC application has different insight questions or personal insight questions. There's 8 different questions that you can pick from, but you're only required to answer 4. The maximum is 350 words for these guys, and you can start by brainstorming the answers to all 8 questions. The reason I recommend that is because maybe there's a question that you're like, I don't know if I want to answer that one. But as you start to write, you may see that there's a lot of information that you can include for that answer. And it may be the easiest one to answer because you have this information, or because maybe now you're talking about something that you're really passionate about that you didn't quite pinpoint before. So by starting to brainstorm and starting to do what I call like a brain dump on all of these 8 different questions, it's going to allow you some flexibility to see, okay, I'm going to answer these 4. Versus if you just pick 4, then you're really limiting yourself. And so I definitely recommend that you start that. But again, while there are 8 prompts, only 4 are required, and it's completely up to you which 4 you pick. There is no preference on which ones you do. So some details, you start applying November 1st to November 30th. Similar to the CSU, it is $70 per application per campus. So, right, so we're sending it to 4 different UC applications. That's 4 different application fees that you need to make sure that you're able to cover. Fee waivers are available for up to 4 campuses, and you also can check your eligibility for these as you're going through and filling out the application. The SAT and ACT scores are not required for admission process or purposes, but they can be used for course placement similar to the CSUs. Any sort of advanced placement, IB, TOEFL, ELTS exams will be asked about on the scores section of the application. And so it's recommended that you have those scores handy as well, or at least know future test dates of when you're going to be taking these exams so that you can list them on your application. Things that they recommend you have handy or right next to you as you're filling out the application include your transcripts. Again, you don't need to submit them yet, but you do need to input the information that's on your transcripts onto the application. Your household annual income, your social security number if you have one, as well as the citizenship status. Okay. For the CSUs and the UCs, that's very broad information, but we definitely recommend that you reach out to your admission counselors at these schools. They are going to be the experts. They are going to be the ones that are most able to help guide you through this process for the CSUs and the UC application, respectively. Now, Cal Lutheran is part of the Common Application, and so we are very knowledgeable on the Common Application and all the different pieces. And so we're going to break down what is the Common Application and what are some tips and tricks that we have for you all. So the Common Application, it's one application. However, you can apply to more than 900 different schools, in-state, out-of-state, large, small, you name it, it's probably on the Common Application. Now, just because there's 900 different campuses that you can send this to does not mean that you should be applying to 900 schools, right? And so this is for you to just go through and add the different institutions that's already on your list that are on the Common Application for them to get all of your information. You go to commonapp.org and you can create an account to allow you to do that. Now, once you create an account, you're going to see that there's different tabs located at the top. That's going to be Dashboard, My Colleges, Common App, and College Search. And so what I want to do is go through a little bit of the tabs and give you the opportunity to jot down some notes and kind of know what to expect as you're clicking through here. So the dashboard, this is where you're going to apply. This is going to where it's going to list where you're going to apply as well as any deadline. So this is going to really give you a snapshot. For example, if you added 4 schools, you're going to see 4 schools listed on there. My Colleges is where each school that you're applying to will actually have its own section. Each school may require supplemental questions that you need to answer. It could be 2, it could be 10. It really just depends on the institution. And My Colleges is where you're going to see those specific instances for those schools. Now, your Common Application, this is actually the application that goes out to every school. So this is where you're going to put down all of your specific information. And then College Search, that's actually where you go to find the different institution that you're looking to apply and add them to your Common Application. Application is actually open now, so you can start your Common Application if you haven't done so already. You can start adding all of the different schools on there, but note that every school has their own deadline. For Cal Lutheran, for example, our early action deadline, that is not binding, so you're not committing to coming to Cal Lutheran, but just really an early notification system. You're telling us early that you want to apply for admission to be considered for maybe some of our higher academic scholarships, and you can know earlier if you're admitted or not. For us, like I said, that's November 15th. For other institutions, that may be November 1st. And so actually here, it used to be November 1st, as you can see, but we did change it to November 15th to give our students a little bit more time to finish working on their application, making sure that you have all of your reviewers in place. Now, the application fee depends on the school. And so it's important for you to kind of calculate that. That's another area that I encourage you to have on your Excel document where you're listing all the details for these specific schools that you're applying to. Note what their application fee is and if there's the opportunity for a fee waiver. For Cal Lutheran, our fee waiver is listed under the question section of Cal Lutheran that is listed under My Colleges, right? So what you are going to want to do is go to My Colleges, find Cal Lutheran, and then under questions there, the second or third question asks you about a fee waiver, and that's where you can select if you qualify for one. And then the personal statement, that personal statement lives under the Common Application tab, and this one personal statement is the one that gets sent to all of these different schools. So I want to dive a little bit deeper into these sections and give you some tips. So for the college search, when you're searching for a specific school, I recommend you don't use the filters. Once you open it up and you see it, you'll know what I mean. You're able to, for example, indicate, show me all of the schools that are within 50-mile radius, or show me all of the schools that are out of state or only in the state of California, for example. The more we use those specific filters, the more we can click something wrong that would make it so that a school that is on the Common Application shows up as if they were not on there. And so if you know you want to apply to California Lutheran University, all you need to do in the search bar is type in California Lutheran University. But maybe you don't, right? Maybe you're like, I know I want to go and study in Washington State. Wonderful. You can go through and then click the filter that only shows you Washington schools for you to start to see all of the different schools that are listed on there for you to do some research on there. And so that's the only time that I would recommend that you use those filters. On your dashboard, keep track of the individual deadlines, right? Including those early notifications. Sometimes if you miss that deadline, you may no longer be considered for specific scholarships, specific programs. It really depends on the school. And so you want to make sure that you're keeping track of all of these different pieces so that you're not left behind, so that you're meeting all those deadlines in a timely manner. Now, the Common Application, like I mentioned before, this is the actual application that goes out to all of these different schools. And so one tip that I have for you here is to make sure that this information is specific to you. You don't want to tell any other school how much you love Cal Lutheran and why you want to come to Cal Lutheran, right? So as long as you're keeping it about you, using those I statements, talking about your dreams, your passions, your experiences, you're going to be okay. But do not use any school's name on the Common Application section. When you go to My Colleges and search a specific school or click on the specific questions for a school, that is where you can start to write specifically about why you love Cal Lutheran, for example. Common Application, that's the space for you, not for the schools. There is a section that says additional information. I really recommend that every student use up this space. So when you're thinking about an application, it really is like a one-way communication street. You're telling us a lot of information about you, and most of the time, we don't get the chance to ask you any questions. And so you want to make sure that every single part of your application is telling us something new about yourself, and you're trying to answer whatever questions may pop up. What do I mean by that? For example, if your grades dipped junior year, but that's because you moved schools or there was a big change at home, or maybe you took on too many AP classes and you started working on campus, and at the same time, you took on a different sport. All of those things combined could be the reason why those grades dipped. But unless you tell us, your admission counselors, we don't know all of those details, right? And so this additional information section is the perfect place to explain anything on your application that you want to make sure that admissions committee, that admission counselor knows about you. So it's really prime retail space that I don't recommend gets left blank. Even if it's not anything that you need to explain on your application, but you want to just tell us more about you, right? Maybe on the personal statement, you're really writing about a specific experience that happened to you, but you want us to know how you are a first generation college student that has also been working to help with finances at home or caretaking for family members. This is the awesome space to do so. So make sure that you use it and make sure that each section of your application is telling us something new about you. You should not use this additional information to repeat, for example, the extracurricular activities that you already listed, because we already read those, right? And so you want to, again, make sure that each section is telling us something new about you. Remember to please start early. I cannot tell you how many students I work with every year that start the application 2 days before the deadline, and they're trying to finish it really quickly. And it shows as we're reading your application, right? It shows that you didn't put in so much time and effort. So right now, late August is the perfect time to start. You can do a section a week and still be on time and meet most deadlines, if not all of the deadlines. Now, your personal statements. This is probably the section that might stress you out the most. I know when I was applying to college, this stressed me out because I didn't know what to write about, right? And there are different prompts that you can pick from, and you get to pick. And that sometimes makes it a little bit more stressful. Which one should I pick? What do I write about? And so there's 7 different prompts, like I said, that you can pick from. And similar to the personal insight questions for the UCs, I recommend you start briefly writing all of them. And you're going to notice that maybe there's 1 or 2 that you really are just like, whoa, I can keep writing and writing and writing on this. And those are the 2 that you're really going to want to zone in on and focus on. Know that it's okay to not have this big story, right? Like your story is enough. And that's all we want to know. This personal statement is a lot of the times the only chance that we have to get to know you. And so whatever story you want to tell us, whatever thing about you you feel makes you unique, that's what we want to know. Don't feel, again, that you need to elaborate a story or tell us what you think we want to hear. All we want to hear is who you are as a person, who you are as a student, and get to know you a little bit more. So make sure that you're writing about you and your interests, what you did in high school, maybe what you're looking forward to in college, and maybe there was that time in high school where you really needed to show up for your team or show up for your family and provide some leadership in an instance. Those are the instances that we want to know about. I really recommend that you write and rewrite, as you'll hear me say later on, but I do recommend that you have 3 readers as you're going through the process, especially when you're done. So write, have readers, rewrite, have some more readers, kind of look over your work. But once you feel like your application, your personal statement is complete, that's when I really recommend those 3. And ask each specific reader to read for a specific thing. What you're going to start to notice is that personal statements and personal statement review can be a little bit subjective. And so if you have one person read your personal statement, they're going to give you some feedback. If you ask another person to read your personal statement, they might give you feedback that's actually opposite of what that first person gave you. So by telling each of your 3 readers at the end what they're reading for really is going to allow you to maximize their feedback, but for you really get your personal statement to be that top-notch statement that you want it to be. One of your readers, have it be a proofreader. They're just reading to make sure that you have all of your grammar where it needs to go and everywhere it needs to be where it needs to be. They are maybe going to be that last final reader that you ask them to read. Your second reader, your first reader, your second reader can be someone that maybe doesn't know you that well. And you're going to want to ask them, did you learn something new about me? Like I said, personal statement is for us to get to know you. So if someone who doesn't know you that well isn't learning a whole lot of new information about you, maybe let's share a little bit more. Maybe let's rewrite it some more so that that person does get to know something new about you. And I also recommend that you have someone that does know you really well, maybe a best friend, a sibling, a guardian, mentor, someone that is there that can say, hey, yeah, this does sound like you. Sounds like a conversation maybe, or yes, I can hear your voice coming through. So again, each reader is going to read for something really specific, but really important. And lastly, make sure that you answer the prompt, right? So go back to the question at the end and make sure that you're like, yes, I fully answered the question. I know that I did, and somebody can help you with that as well. So that was kind of my advice. This is all of advice that we have pulled together from different resources that, again, you have access to as well. We just consolidated it into one presentation for you. So this is through Chicago Public Schools. They start saying you need to start with a brainstorm, right? They recommend starting with really finding 3 words that describe who you are. Like, for example, some adjectives. And you want to make sure that these adjectives have a really positive connotation, right? So you don't want to use words like they use clown or jokester or cool, because what does that really mean? And so instead, for example, if you are someone who's funny, right? Like, okay, maybe I'm a funny person. What does that look like? Maybe you're a leader. Maybe you are creative. Maybe you're an artist. Maybe you are an entrepreneur, right? What words would you use to describe yourself? And then start to write 2 to 3 sentences for each word and how they describe you, why you selected those words. And it's okay to explain like why people like you for these traits. This personal statement should be all about you. And so start to write those things. And what you're going to see is that some of them you're like, hey, I really like this part. I really want to showcase this part in my application. And again, it's just a part, right? Like there's so many pieces that make up who you are. You're just sharing one piece, but you want to make sure that that piece that you are sharing it in the best way possible. And also they say that the most important piece of this kind of example, this exercise that you can have it lead to your personal statement is to really share how these traits are going to shape your future, right? Okay, so if you chose the word entrepreneur and you're writing 2 to 3 sentences about what you did in high school that made you be an entrepreneur, why is that important in your future? Is that maybe why you want to study business administration because you want to expand this company that you already created, right? So tying it to your now and who you are and why that makes up who you are, but also tying it to your future is going to be important. Through College Board, they say to let your first draft flow, right? Gathering your notes and jotting down really quick thoughts, kind of doing that brain dump is really important. You just need to start writing pen to paper, start typing, whatever method works best for you, but just start writing down all of the ideas. Don't worry about grammar, don't worry about sentence structure, don't worry about does this make sense. You'll have the opportunity to go back and rewrite. The important piece is just to start writing. Errors can be fixed later on. That's not something you need to worry about in your first draft. We want to worry about those later on, but not at the very beginning. As you're doing all of these different brain dumps and trying to figure out like, okay, where do I want to take this? Go back and revisit the prompt. A lot of the times we can start writing or even talking, and then we were supposed to go this way, and now we're starting to venture off this way. Oh, wait, let me bring it back. Let me refocus myself. Let me recenter myself, and really answering the question, which is really important. Add specifics when you can, right? Some of my favorite personal statements that I've read are statements that feel like I'm having a conversation with this person, or statements where they bring me back to a specific instance and they're so specific with the details, with what they're writing, with the description that they're using, that I feel like I am right then and there with them in that moment, even if it was 5 years ago. And so the more specific you can be and share some of those details, the more you're going to pull your reader in. There's some questions coming in. I promise I'll get to those. Okay, so again, feedback, right? I recommend having those 3 readers, but feedback is so important. And so your best writing is going to be your rewriting. You never want to submit your first draft. I promise you, admission counselors can tell. Even if you're a gifted writer, we can tell if it's your first write. And so make sure that you're giving yourself plenty of time to get a lot of feedback, to delete stuff, to start over, to rewrite sentences, to rewrite paragraphs. And so give yourself that time. The earlier you start, the more time you have. The later you start, the less time you have, of course. Know that your essay is not just about us learning who you are. It also gives us admission counselors a gauge of your writing skills. So you want to put your best foot forward. This is the first thing that you are submitting as like an official document, an official paper to this institution that you want to study at. And so you don't want to submit a personal statement that doesn't have uppercase letters or doesn't have punctuation or is just one giant blob of text, right? And so you want to be able to take time to be thoughtful about all of these things so that you start with the best foot forward. Ask your peers, your teachers, school counselors, family members to read this, but you also need to give people plenty of time to read it. So if the deadline is at the end of the week, I'm not going to ask my teacher to read this on a Wednesday and say, hey, I need it by Thursday because I need to submit it on Friday, right? They're also very busy and they need to be able to be thoughtful on the feedback that they're giving you. So the more time you give them, the better off you're going to be and the more quality of feedback you're going to get. Get feedback in stages, right? So maybe at the very beginning, when you're getting all this feedback, you're asking, are there any gaps, right? Did I answer my prompt? Did you follow my story? Are you learning something from me? Towards the end, it's that style, it's that grammar, punctuation, making sure that the format looks great. So some keys to success. This is through the National Association of College Admission Counselors. Start early. More time is less stress. I cannot tell you how many times it's happened where a student starts the application the day before and then systems can crash, right? As much as we rely on the internet, it is not guaranteed. So if our deadline is November 15th and you're starting your application on November 14th, it can easily crash. And because the system crashed, we'll try to be as flexible as we can, but sometimes some schools are not able to be super flexible. And so if you miss the deadline, you miss the deadline. But if this maybe could have been avoided if you started way earlier. I tell students, give yourself a deadline of 2 weeks before the actual deadline. So if our deadline on paper is November 15th, you're going to make sure that you submit your application by November 1st. Because if the system crashes on November 1st, that's okay. You have 2 weeks where you can still submit it. You can reach out to me and say, hey, Deanna, I'm trying to submit my application, but the common application is down and it's not letting me. Is there something you can do? I can work with our operations team and see what we can do for you, right? But you're giving me plenty of time. If you email me at 10 p.m. on November 14th, I can guarantee you I will not see your email until much, much later, right? We're not on our emails 24/7. And so you want to give yourself time to also get that assistance that you're looking for. Be yourself and be honest. Write about what you love. Like, don't use anybody else's ideas. Don't use anybody else's passions. Like, again, who you are is enough. And that's all we want to do. We just want to learn about you. Stay focused, right? Stick to the theme and stick to it. There's a lot of different aspects about who you are that you can share with us. But if we try to write about all of that in one personal statement, it can be a little bit overwhelming, right? If we're writing 2-3 sentences about one thing, and then we move on and we write 2-3 sentences about another thing, and then there's 5 more things you want me to read, where is this like cohesiveness? Where is this theme? And so making sure that it's all tying together in a nice and concise way. Write and then rewrite, and then I'll add rewrite some more. Like, you have to proofread and you have to give yourself plenty of time to get that feedback and start over on some sections. I've worked with students before where we're like, okay, great, this opening paragraph is maybe the one area that we need to work on. And I'll tell them, don't throw it away, don't completely delete it, but start over. Start over and see if there's a different way that you can start that personal statement, that paragraph. And 9 times out of 10, it just takes a little bit of working through it. Get a second opinion, those feedback. That feedback is super important. Those feedback readers are super important. Ask, where can I improve? But also, like, where did I do really great at? Because in those areas where you did really great at might be areas that you can expand and have that be really the bulk of your personal statement. Don't settle for, yeah, it's good. You want your personal statement to be great for yourself, for your readers. You want to be that personal statement that we share in the application or in the admission office and say, like, you have to read this personal statement. Submit it on time. I mentioned it when I talked about starting early. You need to submit those applications on time. Some schools can be more flexible than others, but it is your responsibility to get those applications submitted. Okay, so we'll move on to some questions and answers here. I know I got one submitted, which is great. Feel free to type those out. And then you all submitted some questions when you were registering for the personal statement. So I'll take some time to answer those as well. Okay, so really good question. Does the common application go to the UC and CSU schools too, or is it just kind of like the CSU app, go to the UC app, or so on and so forth? Really good question. The CSU application only goes to the CSUs. The UCs only go to the UCs. You will not find a school that is on the UC or the CSU system on the common application. And so if you're looking at, for example, here in Southern California, if you want to apply to CSU Northridge and UCLA and Cal Lutheran, that's going to be 3 different applications. And so it's important to know what schools you're applying to and how is the best way to apply for them. Okay, so let's see. There's some specific Cal Lutheran questions that I'll answer a little bit in a second. I want to make sure that we answer this broad questions as well. Okay, we're asking some Cal Lu specific questions, so we'll get started on those. And if you have more broad questions, I promise we'll answer those too. Are there campus dorms here? Yes, we do have amazing residence halls. For our first year students, there are 3 main areas, but we do have guaranteed housing and parking for all 4 years. Laundry is free on campus, parking is free on campus, and all of our residence halls are what we call suite layout. So there is no communal bathroom that you go down the hall and share with everyone on your floor. The most you will share your immediate space with is about 3 other students. That's a really nice space for our students. The first year residence halls, there's Thompson and Peterson that are exactly the same. And then there's Mount Clef. Now, in terms of the cost, when we're looking at both housing and meal plans, we're looking at about $16,000-$17,000 in addition to tuition, but there is a lot of financial aid that you could qualify for. And so I recommend that you get in touch with your specific admission counselor, or you can set up a meeting with me myself, and I would be more than happy to go over all of that information. So we have a question here about our presidential scholarship. This is a really awesome question. Our presidential scholarship is our highest tier of academic scholarships. It can go up to full tuition. It's automatic consideration, so there's nothing extra you need to do to be considered for this application other than applying by our early action deadline. So if you miss the early action deadline, you can still apply for regular decision, but you won't be considered for that presidential scholarship. It is a really competitive scholarship. I would say it's about the top 5% of our applicant pool. Applicant pool is the one that then maybe gets invited to come to campus, but it really just depends on our applicant pool each year. How many colleges should you apply to? This is a really great question. I would not say that there's like a specific number you should be aiming for. I would say it's going to vary depending on you and the type of schools that you're searching for. I would recommend having some reach schools where maybe what their GPA or their average GPA that they're admitting maybe is a little bit higher than your own GPA, but you want to give it a shot, right? Maybe a couple of schools in those areas. And then you have a couple target schools where you're like, okay, this is the GPA that they are admitting. That's right where my GPA is. I feel like we're going to hit the bullseye with these schools. And so definitely making sure you have a balance. We also do have another question here on scholarships. We do have a lot of academic scholarships here at Cal Lutheran. Those scholarships can range to a little bit over $30,000. Like I mentioned, our presidential scholarship, we have visual performing arts scholarships that can also go up to full tuition. And so know that you have the opportunity to be considered for those. If you go to callutheran.edu/scholarships, you will see a list of all of our scholarships. We talked about those application deadlines and when they open. This is a good question. So learning more about the early application benefits. So again, you're going to hear back sooner if you're admitted or not, and you're going to be considered for the presidential scholarship. But in terms of what we're looking for in our student body, this is a really great question. I would say the students that are really successful on campus are the students that are really looking for community, students that want to support each other, that are very driven. Our students are double majoring, minoring, major in a minor. They're doing internships. They're getting involved with our CLU community, but our community at large. We also have students that really just zone in and focus on their academics, and maybe they're not the most involved, but they're still part of our campus community. And so we are an institution that is looking to support students from all backgrounds and support them through their graduation, but also even after. So for example, we have career services where it's a lifelong service, and even 20 years after graduation, if you need help revamping your resume or getting started or doing interview skills or salary negotiations, you have the opportunity to continue to work with them at no cost because you are a CLU alumni. So really awesome opportunities for our students there. In terms of requirements for the college, I'm guessing it's going to be for us. In terms of what's required for you to apply for admission, we're going to require your Common Application. Cal Lutheran is Common App exclusive, meaning that's the only way to apply for admission. We're going to require official high school transcripts and a letter of recommendation. Now, that letter of recommendation does need to be from a teacher or a counselor, someone that can speak on who you are in kind of like a student format. But those are the big three requirements. If you have those SAT, ACT test scores, you are able to submit them. However, we are test optional. So if you don't have them, you don't want to submit them, that's completely okay. Of the students that we admitted last year, about 80% of them applied test optional. So your application is not going to be looked at any differently or weighed any differently as you're going through the process if you choose not to submit those test scores. Cal Lutheran does not have a minimum GPA that you need to meet in order to gain admission. We review all of our applications holistically, meaning I'm going to read your entire personal statement, that additional information, those letters of recommendation, look at your transcripts. If you did an admissions interview, we're going to take that into account. So really looking at the entire application to determine an admission or not. So we don't have a minimum GPA. You can go ahead and submit that application and know that it's going to be reviewed and considered for admission. So more scholarship questions. And so again, I kind of went over briefly the scholarships that we have here at the admissions office. In addition to that, you're going to submit your application for financial aid to be considered for any federal, state, or maybe additional institutional financial assistance based on your household income. So we have two buckets: merit based on academics or visual and performing arts, and then income based. And so we'll kind of tap on those two buckets to get an entire financial aid offer. I always let and encourage students know to not discount any institutions based on what I call the sticker price, right? Or that cost of attendance that's first published. For example, here at Cal Lutheran, 98% of our students get financial aid. And so even if I met with you, each of you individually right now to try to figure out how much Cal Lutheran would cost, I would not be able to answer that question. We first go through the application process, then we go through the financial aid process. And then after that, will we actually know what those numbers are? And I'll say, like, I am more than happy to meet with you. Every single one of my team members and colleagues here at the admission office is also happy to meet with you to go over what those costs would be. We just need to wait a little bit longer in order to be able to do that. Again, applications open now through the Common Application, so you can submit that application now, and we review those application components. Awesome. So we have some more questions coming up here. Again, no minimum GPA for Cal Lutheran, and we do have a swim and water polo team. That's awesome. We do, yes. So if you're interested in playing and being a Kingsman or Regal on one of our teams here on campus, you certainly can do so. I recommend going to clusports.com, and there you're going to see a list of all of our teams as well as our coaching staff, so you can reach out to them directly. But the best thing to do is going to fill out, you're going to see it at the top right corner. It's going to be recruits, and it's a questionnaire that's going to ask everything that our coaches want to know about you. You're going to click that guy, fill it out, and it's automatically sent to our coaches. If there's mutual interest, they will reach out to you and start on that recruitment process. If a student qualifies for a dean's candidate, will the process still be the same? Great question. So some of you may have been selected as a dean's candidate. If you were, congratulations. And so what that is really, we feel like it's kind of like a two-way street. You're going to be a great fit for us as an institution. Now, if you weren't selected as a dean's candidate, please don't feel like that doesn't mean that we don't think that. It just means that maybe we haven't received information or anything along those lines. And so reach out to me if you have any questions on that. But yes, the process will be exactly the same. Okay. I don't think there's any more questions coming in. I'll give it a second or two to see if any additional questions are popping up. But this is, again, my contact information. Feel free to reach out if you have any questions on the information that we covered. If you want to do an individual appointment to talk about your own application, what it looks like for you to come to Cal Lutheran, or maybe just questions about the college process, about the financial aid process in general, maybe not super specific to Cal Lutheran, that's completely okay. We're here to help guide you through the process. Even if Cal Lutheran falls off your list, know that you have a team over here that is more than happy to help and support along the way. I don't see any other questions coming through, so we'll leave you with that. I wish you all the best of luck as you go through your application process, and we look forward to hopefully welcoming you all on campus sometime soon. Have a great day.